Welcome everyone to our webinar, Climate Commitments in Action, the SBTi Journey with Endava and Watershed. I'm Roshina Nandra, and I'm the Head of Innovation at Endava, and I'll be your host today. To introduce Endava, we're a global technology services company, headquartered in London and dedicated to delivering innovative solutions that drive business success for our clients across about 15 industries. Our mission is to empower organizations to thrive in the digital age by providing cutting-edge tech solutions and exceptional services. We focus on creating dynamic platforms and intelligent digital experiences that enhance our clients' competitiveness and enable them to achieve their strategic goals, not just in sustainability, but also other IT, business, and transformation goals. Now, there's a lot of noise around climate commitments. But what do they really look like in practice? Today, we're going to take you behind the scenes to explore how companies are turning climate targets into real action with the help of climate tech and trusted partners. At Endava, we're seeing how technology and data are becoming essential to driving sustainability forward, both for ourselves and in how we work with our clients. And partners like Watershed are helping businesses tackle complex challenges like Scope 3 and SBTi with clarity and speed. Now, our goal today isn't just to give you a checklist. It's to share with you practical stories, tools, and lessons to help shape your own journey. Whether you're just starting out or already deep into delivery, we hope that this session sparks ideas and encourages collaboration. I'm joined today by two fantastic speakers. We have Tarik Moussa, Sustainability Advisor at Watershed, and also Elena Grineva, ESG Controller at Endava. Let me hand over to the two of you to introduce yourselves. Tarik, do you want to go first? What do you do and what is Watershed?
Thanks, Roshina. Delighted to be here. So my name's Tarik. As you said, I'm a Sustainability Advisor at Watershed. First, briefly just on Watershed. So Watershed is the enterprise sustainability platform. Companies like Airbnb, Carlyle Group, FedEx, Visa, Dr. Martens, and of course, Endava use Watershed to manage climate and ESG data, produce audit-ready metrics for reporting, and drive real decarbonisation. My role at Watershed is to partner with those customers. So I was a consultant in a former life, and similar to that at Watershed, I work with our customers to help them understand the landscape of reporting requirements and to develop tailored decarbonisation and sustainability strategies for their organisation.
Thank you, Tarik, and thank you for making the time to be here with us today. Elena, could you tell us a little bit more about yourself and Endava and Endava's relationship with Watershed?
Sure, thank you, Roshina. So I'm Elena. I joined Endava more than 3 years ago, and recently I took over the role of ESG Controller and also bring in my experience of external audit and finance for more than 10 years into the role. So at Endava, we work closely with Watershed that helps us produce our carbon footprint reports. And particularly Tarik has been very helpful in helping us understand technical complexities of some regulatory frameworks, walking us through the potential strategies to meet our SBTi targets. So we do value, Tarik, your involvement in our growth and sustainability.
Endava is one of those companies, of course, to which these standards also apply. Elena, can you talk a little bit about Endava's journey in pursuing SBTi?
Sure, and thank you, Roshina, for the question. I really like it because it gives me the opportunity to share our experience in Endava. So SBTi stands for Science-Based Target Initiative. It's a global partnership that helps companies like Endava to set clear and measurable goals to decrease their greenhouse gas emissions. And these targets are aligned with science, and science tells us that we need to minimize the global warming to 1.5 Celsius. So in other words, it means that you just can't set any targets you want. They can't be arbitrary. You need to think them through, and they need to be science-based so we can minimize the negative impact on the environment. So why is it important? In our world, it's important because nowadays you just can't say, oh, I'm green, I do care about the planet. You need to prove it. And you normally prove it with your plans of actions, how you achieve this, and you do need to achieve the results. And this is where SBTi comes in. If you think about it like as a GPS for climate action, it helps you understand where you stand in terms of your emissions. So what are your major sources of emissions? And also it helps you to show where you need to go. And then it will keep you accountable while you are on your journey. So it's a great system. So in Endava, we set our targets to cut our emissions from our operations and our supply chain. And this includes the energy we use in the offices, how suppliers operate, but also it helps our customers in their decarbonizing journeys, just to make us as least emissive supply as possible for them. And this is not just compliance. So we see at Endava SBTi as SBTi targets as building trust, because investors are looking for this. Customers are asking for this on a daily basis multiple times, and employees expect this. And increasingly, the regulators, like for example, ESRS or CSRD, they require you to report on the target. So it's not just like a voluntarily thing. So you have to at some point you will have to report on these things. So for us, so when you hear SBTi, it's kind of stamp of credibility. It helps you demonstrate that you're not just talking you're not just talking sustainability, but you are acting on it, and you are acting on it in line with the science. So I think SBTi is really very important in ESG reporting, because they just interlinked. You just can't do one without another. So I think this is how at Endava we see this process.
Great, thank you very much. I mean, I like your analogies there. GPS for climate action, you said, and giving you that stamp of credibility. Tarik, I know that SBTi standards are getting stricter. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that and what's on the horizon for companies.
Yeah, thanks, Roshina. I'm actually going to build on Elena's point about this stamp of credibility. There's been a lot of noise around sustainability recently, and what some people have interpreted from that is our companies pulling back from sustainability. But we're speaking to these companies day in, day out, and what we're seeing is the hard work of sustainability is still moving forward, and companies want that stamp of credibility to remain. So what we're seeing is the SBTi is really raising the bar for companies setting net zero targets. They want to continually improve the standard there. And so at the moment, there's a framework for how to set a net zero goal under the SBTi standard. They have released a draft version 2 with quite a few technical changes. And I could talk about exactly what's changed, but the key point is none of those changes are certain. Things will be in flux for a while. The new standard won't come into effect until 2027. And so rather than get lost in the detail, I think what's useful to do is reflect on how some of the key proposed changes complement the wider market shifts we're seeing at the moment. So for example, one of the proposed changes the SBTi is putting forward is that GHG inventories would need to be assured by a third party. That's also required by the CSRD in Europe, internationally through the ISSB standards in Australia, Canada, and elsewhere, and for most large companies through the California climate rules. Likewise, the SBTi is proposing that companies should disclose transition plans. It's not just say how much they're going to reduce emissions, but explain how they're going to reduce those emissions in practice. And again, that's a requirement under all of the same regulations I mentioned earlier on. So for me, the key point here is that companies should start working towards a target from now. You're not going to get a fully assured footprint, a target, and a net zero strategy overnight. But by starting now, you give yourself some time to get ready in advance of these new expectations coming into play.
Awesome. So key message there is to start now, don't delay. Now, Endava, of course, is one of those companies to which these standards apply. So Elena, can you talk a little bit about Endava's journey in pursuing SBTi?
Yeah, thank you, Roshina. I like this question because I can be honest with our journey and just not telling that it's just like one click and you're done. I think the first message that I want to share is that setting up SBTi targets is not the first step. There is a multiple steps before that you need to undertake before setting up your SBTi targets. And I think the most important thing to start with is just to understand your emissions footprint, where you stand, what are the most significant sources of emissions, and then starting building the processes and controls in place to make sure that the data you receive is as accurate as complete. And when I tell this that, like this step, but this step is also setting up processes and controls, but also changing the mindset of people you are dealing with, because normally the people involved in this process are not from finance or sustainability part, and they can have their different goals and their different objectives on their day-to-day jobs. So the role of the sustainability team is just to make sure that they raise awareness of what SBTi is, why we are doing this, why this invoice bill is as important as the one that they give to the finance team, and that the information recorded there needs to be transferred to the final footprint as accurate as possible. So they understand that the scrutiny over this data is at the same level as the scrutiny over finance data. And so it takes time to change the mindset of people. Takes time and patience and constant working. And in Endava, we do like regular trainings for people just to make sure that they understand the ultimate goals, what we are doing. So once you do this process and once you're comfortable, well, you're not comfortable, but once you get at ease a little bit and understand the data flowing through as complete, as accurate as possible, then you can start thinking about which baseline you're going to choose, because the baseline is really very important. And you need to make sure that the data that you choose for the baseline is, and I repeat it like multiple times, as accurate and as complete as possible. And so once you choose your baseline, it may not be necessarily your recent one, so you just need to make sure. Then the next step is you start doing the modeling of the scenarios, just to come up with the targets that ambitious, but also achievable for your company. And there is no one answer for all companies. So this is where you may need to involve some external party providers, just help you modeling these scenarios and helping you understand what targets will suit your company while you keep growing based on the type of the company you are, how you grow organically through acquisition. So this is also very important to consider. And once you set up your targets, don't think that you can put your pants down and just sit and wait. So SBTi organization is really want to make sure that you commit to your targets. So there will be lots of questions. There will be lots of follow-ups. And this is just really to make sure that you do mean this and you do commit to them, and you do take full responsibility for the data you provided to them. So this process, I would call it kind of a journey. Don't take it as one odd thing to do, and just maybe enjoy learning so many new things on the way.
Absolutely. Thank you, Elena. It was really interesting hearing you at the beginning of your answer to that question, talk about kind of the pre-journey and the different goals of different groups and different stakeholders in the company, and how you kind of need to change the mindset there. I'm going to put a pin in that because I'd like to come back to that one later. But Tarik, if I can ask you a question before we get there. SBTi targets, they address all three scopes of emission, and they increasingly emphasize scope 3, which is often where most emissions lie, but it's also the hardest to address. Why is that?
Yeah, great point. As you said, scope 3 emissions are a major focus for the SBTi because for many organizations, they can represent 70% or more of their total GHG emissions, but they are the most challenging to tackle. And just to level set, because sometimes it can be a little bit of technical jargon, scope 1 is typically your own assets and the fuel they use. So the fuel, the gas that goes into heating your buildings. Scope 2 is, to simplify, the electricity you use. Scope 3 is everything else alongside your value chain, spanning upstream and downstream activities like purchased goods, transportation, and product use. Companies have limited visibility and control over those emissions, and they depend on data and action from a wide network of suppliers, customers, and other partners. Data availability and data quality can often be really inconsistent as well, which can make measurement and management really complex. So that's what makes things challenging, but I'd also like to touch on what makes them exciting. And if you think about Scope 3 emissions, if you're coming at this from a financial accounting background, it can sound a little bit strange. In financial accounting, we have this concept of debits and credits. We don't double count things between companies. For emissions, we do double count Scope 3 emissions across the value chain. And why is that? It's because those emissions, whilst they don't occur directly within our own operations, are things we can influence. So in a sense, Scope 3 accounting recognizes that the responsibility for emissions reduction is shared. So while it might seem daunting at the start, it's also the greatest area of opportunity for impact and innovation. By working together with value chain partners, engaging our suppliers, engaging our customers, and even our peers, actually working with them in a different way that we might have worked with them in the past, companies can create these ripple effects that have huge long-term impacts.
Great point. We're in this together. It's not something that we can do alone. Do you have examples, Tarik, of how other companies are navigating Scope 3?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, it is one of the most challenging areas to tackle, but we do have a couple of tried and tested approaches for tackling Scope 3. The first is to embed Scope 3 action across the organization. Someone like Elena, for example, is doing a fantastic job at Endava, but she can't tackle Scope 3 alone. You need procurement, you need business travel, you need facilities, HR, product design, and other teams to play a critical role in decarbonisation. So it's really about how do you make Scope 3 part of the organisational culture and integrate it into business processes and critically decision-making to make sure that decarbonisation isn't siloed into just a sustainability team. Secondly, you should focus on getting better data, but being really purposeful about that. We think you should be intentional about it. We've seen sometimes when you engage suppliers, companies go in, they think, let's get the data first and figure out what we're going to use it for later on. But then they end up not being able to act on the data that they've gotten. And what they find is they've spent a lot of time on it. Their suppliers have spent a lot of time on it and they've gotten very little value out of it. So the best approach is one where data collection builds trust in your emissions footprint and helps you identify real decarbonisation opportunities and provides a basis for tracking and communicating progress year over year. We want to be able to prove the reductions we're making. The third and final one I'll talk about is stack ranking your opportunities. There are ways to decarbonise nearly every aspect of Scope 3. Some of those will be easier, some of those will be more cost effective, some of those will be harder and more expensive. And to decarbonise at scale, we need sustainability to make business sense. The best way to do that is to analyse your value chain, identify the bigger sources of emissions, and prioritise the interventions that are both achievable and high impact. This might mean focusing on high emitting suppliers, switching to lower carbon materials, or redesigning products. And ultimately, success comes from combining cross-functional collaboration, purposeful data collection, and smart prioritization.
Thank you, Tarik. Elena, Tarik said Endava's doing a great job. Can you tell us more about that? Can you share anything about how Endava's managing this or any key challenges or lessons learned?
Yeah, no, sure. Thank you, Tarik, for noting our great job. But I agree with Tarik that no matter how I do my job great, I can't do it on my own. And this requires involvement of all different departments and us talking all together. So what we do in Endava, we have like regular carbon reduction working groups where we discuss how we are going to achieve the targets. And it's kind of small steps. It's not that we are just like, coming up with a strategy like once in a lifetime. So it's small steps that we're trying to achieve. And this is where like my team comes very handy for other teams because we can give them information taken from Watershed in terms of the most emissive offices. Can you look into this one and just see are there any opportunities, what we are going to do? Or in terms of the suppliers, what are like the biggest chunk of suppliers that give us most emissions and they don't have any publicly available information on SBTi targets? Are they going to submit them? Have they submitted them? And this is where we use Watershed functionality where it gives us the our suppliers by emissions or by spend if we need to, and then it gives us what kind of at what stage the supply is. Are they planning to submit? Have they submitted? Are they validating? And this is where we can see what is the high priority that haven't submitted any information publicly, or like medium priority where they're not super emissive and they're not biggest spend. So maybe we will act on them a little bit later, but prioritize the biggest ones. So this is where Watershed helps us in building our strategies and having a meaningful discussions with other departments.
I mean, this is all very interesting. So thank you both. Just for our listeners, Endava's and Watershed's practical experiences with Scope 3 tracking and data automation could be highly relevant to you if you represent a digital or service-based company where your emissions aren't necessarily from factories, but they're actually from cloud use or software or end-user devices. So if it's okay, I'd like to just take a quick moment to reflect on the role that technology is already playing here. At Endava, we work with clients to track Scope 3 emissions in those non-traditional areas that I mentioned: cloud usage, software efficiency, and even emissions from end-user digital journeys. Now, these are often invisible parts of a company's footprint, but with the right data and automation, they become actionable. We have our own tools that can assist in the automation of data and increase the efficiency of data collection and analysis. And we also integrate tools and technologies from partners like Watershed as well. So bringing it back to you, Tarik, from this whole conversation, what I don't want to happen is that our listeners start to feel like, climate action is so overwhelming that they get paralyzed by it. How can Watershed help to simplify things?
So the first thing to say is, luckily, no one needs to walk this path alone. We have a structured approach for helping our customers get data that they can trust and emissions reductions that they can prove. The most obvious thing a technology solution like Watershed provides is we eliminate the chaos of spreadsheet. Our platform provides a single source of truth for all your ESG data with clear audit trails and backed by methodologies developed by our in-house science team, which is led by one of the co-authors of the Greenhouse Gas Protocol. The second thing is, by working with a company like Watershed, we help our customers turn that data into insights and actions. So right from the start, we have our GHG experts advising customers on getting the right data into the system to meet their needs. Then, once they have a footprint, they can model the reductions pathways within the tool, and they can get advice from sustainability advisors like myself to develop tailored sustainability strategies for their organization. And the third thing is we can make this work at scale. So in the same way that you don't do your financial accounting through spreadsheets, we've got simple data templates, API connectors, and a supplier engagement platform with pre-built questionnaires. So you can focus on the hard work of strategy and on the administrative work of data collection.
Great. And Elena, I know that Endava works with Watershed. How is it simplifying your life?
Well, in many ways. So as I mentioned previously, so for example, from the supply engagement, there is a really good functionality for you to identify what is your priority number one, priority number two, and then what is not priority. So this is where we can use. So we also use Watershed to analyze abnormalities, because when we upload the data that we assume complete and accurate, we still identify some errors in the consumption data where you can see like big hikes, or for example, something big spikes or something that doesn't look right. So Watershed helps us with this. And as I mentioned in the beginning, Tarik helps us to translate this difficult language, regulatory language, into simple one. And we had like a couple of advisory sessions that helped us to move forward, because we were feeling stuck and we needed something to clarify, to understand. But Tarik helped us to overcome this anxiety and to help us move forward with our steps further.
Thank you, Elena. This is a super interesting conversation, and I know that we have some Q&A. But before we get there, I want to pick up on points that both of you made actually in the discussion already. I'm interested in how to build that business case for sustainability broadly. Many people with sustainability titles in organizations struggle with executive buy-in, which you both alluded to. But what I've noticed is that framing emissions reduction in terms of operational gains, like cloud efficiency or maybe reduced waste or energy costs, those things help to shift the conversation from compliance to commercial benefit. So this is a question really to both of you. Tarik, maybe you can go first. Where have you seen sustainability initiatives also drive cost savings or operational gains? And how can companies use that to help build the business case?
Thanks, Roshina. This is absolutely the right question to be asking, and I'm really excited to hear what Elena is going to talk about as a practitioner, kind of living this day in, day out. Reflecting on the past few years as a sustainability practitioner, it's been a tough journey, but one of the things we've had comparatively easy is that we've had regulation as this big driver of sustainability action. But given the ongoing political uncertainty, sustainability teams are having to revisit the business case for sustainability and get buy-in from potentially now skeptical stakeholders. So for me, as I mentioned before, what I want is for sustainability to be sustainable, not just something that you do when the times are good, but something that makes commercial sense and is embedded into the way your business operates. This is a very hot topic amongst our customers, and I can share a few examples from Watershed's work on how we've helped customers build the strong case for sustainability action. For one of our customers, sustainability was the driving force behind them getting their internal data in order. And it was only after they generated their first footprint that for the first time, they had this single centralized view of not just emissions, but also energy use across their entire estate. And what they discovered was there were several properties that they actually no longer owned, but they had been paying the utility bills for several years. And cutting those out saved them literally millions of dollars. And getting that ESG data in order, getting the governance, the process and controls around those was the thing that helped them identify the opportunity for cost saving. For another big group of customers, the other big driver we're seeing is this idea of revenue at risk. So one of the companies we worked with came to Watershed in part because they'd lost one of their existing customers because the company wasn't reporting their own emissions. We're increasingly seeing sustainability requirements flow down into RFPs and contracts. So that could be reporting on your GHG inventory, purchasing renewable electricity, setting a science-based target, and not acting on sustainability there means companies are at risk of losing future revenue. And documenting those cases, taking them to your CFO and to your CEO, are a really effective way of building the case for sustainability.
Cool. Elena, is Endava doing the same thing? Are we using cost savings or operational gains to help build the business case as well?
Yeah, so I agree with Tarik in terms of the sustainability uncertainty that has been in the recent years, and how it's difficult to get approval from the main stakeholders. And I think the main point here is the tone from top to bottom is really important to be able to drive these sustainability efficiencies. And I think one of the point from inside of Endava is that we are being asked by our customers on a regular basis, have we submitted SBTis? What are our plans? How we are trying to reduce the things?
Wonderful. Thank you both. I think we can now move on to our Q&A. We do have time for a couple of questions, and I've looked down the list and I've picked two good ones. So the first question is for you, Elena. And this is written, I'll read out what the asker actually wrote. I'm a business that currently works with Endava on providing training services. How might this change influence our ongoing collaboration? What should we anticipate moving forward?
Thank you, Roshina, for the question. We have set our target that 64% of our suppliers by spend, and this covers our purchases of goods and services and capital goods, will have science-based targets by the end of FY28. So at the moment, we are working to better understand how we can collaborate with our suppliers and help them to start on this journey. Early June, we ran a survey with them just to understand where they are in terms of the submitting the SBTi targets. And based on this survey and the responses we received from our suppliers, we will determine and implement additional actions to help us to move towards these targets. But to be honest, the Scope 3 target on the purchases of goods and services and capital goods are the biggest one that we have to achieve because it is our biggest impact on the emissions.
Thank you. Elena, I'm going to ask you to keep going with the second question, and then I'm going to bring Tarik in. And the second question is, as a business, we are being asked to report against lots of sustainability frameworks and regulations. How can either Endava or Watershed help us manage them and make sure that we meet all of these requirements?
Yeah, I think Tarik will be best suited to answer this question because he's a technical guy. But I can talk from my perspective that, as Endava being a multinational company, there are so many regulations we need to follow. But to be honest, when you start following one regulation, you understand that you already did part for another one. And this really helps because you say, oh, we need to report scope 1, 2, and 3. And you see that you needed to report in a couple of frameworks. And you say, oh, God, thanks, God, I've done this before. So now I'm already almost compliant with another one. So I think it's a big process and you just need to start somewhere. And when you start somewhere, you realize that you're not doing it just like for one framework. There's lots of overlapping between them. But I think Tarik is better equipped with this to answer this question.
Go ahead, Tarik. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Elena. I think Elena's hit the nail on the head there. There's this alphabet soup out at the moment of different regulations: CSRD, ESRS, ISSB, ASSB, GRI, and so on and so on. But actually, there's a huge amount of commonality between these different frameworks and requirements. And Watershed's goal is to simplify things. We are the enterprise sustainability platform. And once you have measured your footprint once with Watershed, for example, you can then use that footprint to report to CSRD, but you can also use it to report to ISSB. And our sustainability advisors, myself and my colleagues, will help you navigate that regulatory landscape, help you develop your strategies for setting targets, and help you really think about what the objectives of your climate and sustainability program should be overall. As I said before, this ultimately needs to be rooted in business value, and you need to define your priorities based on that. And that's what we're here to help with.
Okay, perfect. Well, I think we're at time. So I'd like to thank you both, Elena and Tarik, for sharing your thoughts and insights with us today. If there's one thing to take away today, I think it's that meaningful climate action doesn't start with having all the answers. It starts with getting clear on your path, then finding the right partners and using technology to turn ambition into impact. At Endava, we're continuing to explore how technology and data can support sustainability at scale. And we're always up for real conversations like this one. So if you'd like to chat more with Endava, please do drop us a line at dava.x.sustainability@endava.com. Or if you'd like to request a demo of Watershed, you can do that too via their website, watershed.com/demo. We hope today gave you practical ideas and a bit of inspiration too. Thanks again, and we look forward to continuing the journey with you. Thank you.
Thank you.